and Mackie.
Thank you, Nighthawk, and welcome to
Dave
and Mackie's
Mackie.
Shining
Dave and
Side
Mackie. There you go. I was completely
That's
muted.
wonderful.
I had the double mute on.
Yeah, coming to you from Australia for Revolution Radio on Revolution.radio. Home to fresh ideas, unadulterated, and conversations in the chat. So, go on. Come into the chat. Important message. Donations are important for the station because there are no other sponsors really apart from the listenership. And go ahead and donate. If you can't donate, tell people about the station. That helps. It's good to talk about the station and the shows and tell people about it. And maybe one of those people can donate if you cannot donate. This is show number 609. 609, believe it or not. That's the truth. 9 and 600. That's a lot of shows, buddy. Sure is. And you can catch the show on the air, on the line, and on your smart device. That's right. Grab an app to listen anywhere or listen at home. With Grace Tabletop Digital Radio. That's right. Now, if you missed Solaris' show, that's okay. She's on the force. She's great. Publisher, documentary filmmaker, researcher, etc. And she was talking to Madeline Rudy and Caroline Bell Tumbleton. So you can, if you want to listen to it, if you missed it, you can listen to it on the archives, which happen to be free. Archives are free. You shouldn't miss Solaris' show if you can help it. And if you do miss it, go ahead and catch her on the archives. Always worth it, trust me. And the archives, as I said, they're free. Before we start broadcasting at you in anger, we would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land from which we broadcast. And for Dave,
it's the Darkinjung.
thank you, sir. You sound like you're very far away. And for myself here, it's the Direct people, of course, and we would like to pay our respects to elders, past, present, and future. Thank you very much. What a week, my friend. What a week. We have a new island. We do, that's true.
Lose one, gain one.
Lose one, gain one. Yeah, but there's a whole bunch of stuff that happened. Tell us about some of the other things.
Yeah, sure. So, if you've been living under a rock, you've missed... Well, I don't know. It's probably the style of today. You should live under a rock, I think. Well, in Iceland, they've had a series and ramping up of volcanic activity. It's caused by magma slowly making its way towards the surface, and they've had anywhere between, say, 2,000 earthquakes, a lot of them very small, but the big ones, they've had at least 10 in the last 48 hours of 4.5 and higher, which is pretty significant. There is a town called Grindavik, and they've evacuated that town entirely. There's no one there. I've got a webcam up of... Actually, I'll show everyone. Hang on, just let me paste this into the chat because this is the current YouTube that we're streaming on. So if you want to have a look, you can. And there is a 4-screen... It's actually 5 screens. One of the quarters is split in 2 of live webcam feed. So when it does blow or pop or do something, at least we'll capture the last milliseconds before the power goes out, if it affects the power. The large quakes are basically all around the town, but it looks like it might emerge about 30 k's from the ocean and kind of northwest of the town. So they might be lucky. But it's so severe that I've got a video up here, Mackie, that you can't see. But it's the magma tunnel is presumed to skirt Grindavik and go all the way up to the mountains. So hopefully if the channel forms and it bursts ground and becomes lava, from magma, then they may very well be safe. Like the town may not experience very much damage as a result, but because there's been so many quakes and they're getting shallower and shallower, I've got to say that there's something extraordinary afoot. Now, I've got Earthquake 3D open, and I'm just going to turn it round to the exact opposite side of the globe, and the antipode of it has exactly the same size earthquakes, believe it or not, which is just north of Darwin, up in, I forget where it is. Yeah, but it's kind of just north of Australia, and it's something else. And there's another point on the Earth where if I get them lined up in the shape of like a peace sign, the same quakes are available there as well in a Y shape. So Iceland, just above Australia, and South America. Really strange that we see all the same size quakes only in those three locations.
That is odd.
Because normally the antipode is where you get it, right? So it's not south of Australia, kind of just a bit north. But that's what it appears to be.
I really wonder what we're looking at here. I mean, the thing is this, right? Things are hotting up, as it were.
Hotting up.
No pun intended. In every arena of our existence, in fact, everything is accelerating, and everything is just getting, I want to say more complex, even, right? So this is the thing that I think we forget. I think this is important to remember. We like to think of ourselves as outside nature, like observing nature. We just, we're above it. We look at us, look, we've accomplished so much. Nature doesn't really apply to us anymore. No, of course it does. But that's not the point I'm making here. The point I'm making is that everything is connected. And some people have postulated that the Earth itself is a living organism, right? I mean, if you look at the Earth in totality in a time freeze or time lapse kind of video, you can see it contracts, it expands. There seems to be some movement across the surface of it, and not just with the clouds. So people have made the argument that the Earth is in fact Gaia, a living organism, and we're just part of it. We're just part of it. Similarly to the bacteria in our gut, or the bacteria or other creatures on our skin. Right now, they might not consider themselves part of us, but they are. Yeah, the bacteria in our gut. In fact, we couldn't live without them. If we didn't have them, we couldn't digest our food properly, etc. So we need them. And in a similar fashion, we are living on the Earth, in the Earth, etc. And they potentially are necessary to some extent for the Earth's continued existence. Maybe we're the self-aware part of the Earth. But the point yet that I still haven't made is that everything is connected, meaning no matter what happens in the world, there's greater context. So we look at the physical world, look at the earthquakes, that's because of that, and there's plate tectonics and all that, okay, I get it. And then we look at, our things, the wars, and, and these wars are happening because of X, Y, Z reason, who knows, right? And then other things are happening as well, like the storms, and maybe there's an economic upheaval, maybe diseases, maybe a species going extinct, maybe the oceans are getting warmer. But all of that is happening in an enclosed system, in our system, the Earth. All of that stuff I just described, no matter how different these things are, they are happening here. And we have to realize, I think, I know this sounds a bit hippie, I get it, that it's all connected. We are all connected. We are born here. We are of the stuff of the Earth. Okay, all our constituent parts, everything we're made of, comes from this planet. I mean, it all came from the star forges. And go back far enough, you can trace yourselves back to Stardust. But right now, though, we are of the Earth. Literally. We are literally of the Earth. And the moon, for example, exerts a certain power or influence over the tides. Nobody would argue that, right? But it seems it also has a certain influence over the cycle of women, for example, right? And yet other people believe it has an influence on our moods. I mean, a lunatic is someone that doesn't act normally, or and lunatic, of course, refers to the influence of the moon. So all of these things, Dave, I think they're happening because there's an imbalance overall, not because we're polluting the earth, or we are at war, or maybe there's maybe you're going through a cloud of cosmic dust which makes the earth hotter, or whatever the case may be. I think it's a combination of all factors working together, especially the things that we cannot see or measure. You know what I mean?
Totally. So I've got a few friends who work in hospitals, both nurses and doctors, and in ED, and they say that they would not ever need to look outside to discover whether the moon is full or not, because they know from the quantity of severe injuries.
Really?
Yeah, it's a thing.
So hang on.
They know that on when it's full moon, they get their ED fills up with more serious injuries.
Really? So just to be very,
let's boil it down. Let's be clear.
If there's a full moon, there's a higher count of people with serious injuries. That's right. Wow. I had no idea that boggles the mind, because it would indicate potentially that the moon exerts an influence on people that is beneficial.
It does, and that they're. It's anecdotal.
Yeah.
But they know without looking outside.
Wow.
Yeah.
How about that?
So
I had no idea. Honestly, didn't have. That's quite something, I tell you.
The other thing that also fills their ED is when the air is rather still, the placement of, and I've got a real life example of this, the placement of retirement villages or nursing homes, for that matter, like palliative care or whatever, is usually not in the most expensive areas, but rather in cheaper land. Doesn't normally have a view. It's in a valley, and the particles from diesel, these are nano, size particles, and they, once breathed in, they can traverse your body and go through cells, but they usually end up in the heart muscle and causing an arrest. And it's diesel that does it out of all of them, because it's, I don't know, the science around the particulate, but in California they saw huge spikes on warm, still days of this heavier than air particulate matter filling up the valleys. And in those locations there were more heart attacks than there were in places that weren't in the valleys. They ended up putting machines there to look at the air quality, and found that they were repulsed by the quantity of these heavy particulates, and then that later led them to discover that was diesel particulates in particular, and particle particular, and that they needed to do something about it. But that was where that ended. The science passed to government, and then we actually saw an increase in diesel vehicles from around the world. And then we saw them saying how they were better mileage, they were cleaner, and of course we know all that, the history about them faking their emissions. And even the ECU, that's the little control unit inside the car that runs the car, the little computer, was smart enough to detect whether the car was in motion whether it was being tested on a in a dyno, or was it actually moving? Because if it was moving, it provided different stats to when it was stationary being tested, and it fixed the numbers for the stationary test.
Wow.
And that was what VW got in trouble for.
Yeah, they got done for that. I remember that.
But they weren't the only ones. Apparently, from what I've read on the internet, there were a lot of other companies that happily paid for their name not to be, bandied around the internet. So, I think it'd be probably safe to say that everyone was doing it. Like it was the style at the time, Grandpa Simpson style. It's just the thing. It's the same as, NASCAR cheats, right? I'm a car guy, right? So NASCAR cheats would get away with it until they got found out and they changed the rules so you couldn't cheat that way anymore. They would just cheat another way. Then until a rule stopped them. And it just kept going. So they got to a point where, even a double firewall where they had fuel between the two skins of the firewall. Extra fuel. Or the guy who ran 2-inch fuel lines because there was no regulation for having a certain size fuel line. Hilarious. Just hilarious stuff. Anyway. So geologically, Mackie, the planet's going crazy. I think they announced that the prior year, in 12 months, was the hottest year ever recorded. Since records were being taken, yeah. And that's because that's a global average.
In fact, ever.
Ever.
Saying.
Yeah.
Even looking at ice core samples and the temperatures that we can deduce from that.
Yeah, right.
It's even hotter than that, which is
nice.
That's troubling.
Well, Mickey, there's a couple of glaciers in the Antarctic that I would, I'm not saying this because I'm evil or, it would kind of weigh in my favour if they were to, carve, because then I'd get, a tidal boat ramp. So, you know where I live. That's what am I saying, right? I'm not saying that I want millions of people to be displaced, billions. No.
It would be billions, though. You're right, because most of our cities and mega cities, in fact, are on rivers.
Mm-hmm.
They're in valleys or along the coastline, right?
We've always built next to water.
Yeah, very few cities. There are, of course there are, but very few cities have been built in the mountains. Why? Because it's really hard to build things in the mountains. Right? You just don't do it that much. And of course, I guess the impact wouldn't be as catastrophic as 12, 13,000 years ago, because there's a lot less ice now than there was then, and the sea level rose about 100 meters then.
That's
100
right.
meters.
Yeah.
Look, in the scheme of things, 100 meters, big deal, whatever. I can run that in 20 seconds, you say, right? And then you probably, if you're half fit, you probably could. The
But
point
not
is this,
uphill.
that's not uphill, you wouldn't. You can't climb in 20 seconds. Okay, but 100 meters, right? That's most of our tallest buildings aren't 100 meters tall.
300 feet.
Yeah, that's a lot. And if you think about, I'm not saying that will happen now. It'd probably be closer. Look, if all the ice melted, I'd say probably closer to 25 or 30 meters, right? If it all melted. And I'm talking about the land ice here.
Mm-hmm.
But if you think about 30 meters, like wherever you live today, if you're living on near the coast,
Mm-hmm.
even near a river.
Just say 3 meters.
Oh, 3 meters.
Just say 3 meters, because that's most of New York is underwater at 3 meters.
Completely.
There's a lot of California that's underwater at 3 meters. A lot of coastal stuff, but that's a sandy loam that used to be sea floor, and that's why it doesn't have very much structural rigidity to it. As far as there's a lot of prone to landslides, right?
Yeah.
So it doesn't. There's no big aggregate in there to hold it together. I know. I used to go running through the Southern California hills, and it's just a sandy loam. I'll tell you.
So, what Dave is saying is that the flooding, while bad enough in and of itself,
Yep.
will have a significant knock-on effect on mudslides, landslides, loss of, forested and arable land, simply because of the way it's structured, the way it's made up, which is true. And we forget that. And it's really quite disturbing. We are marching towards this, and nobody seems to really understand what is happening. People, abstractly, we're talking about climate change, we're talking about this is going to happen, that's going to happen. The people that lived 13,000 years ago, let's call it 14, whatever, I'm not even going to say, whenever the last ice age ended, had a catastrophic change to their life. Dave and I both believe a high civilization, maybe several high civilizations, certainly comparable to ourselves in our technological achievement, higher in other areas, lower in other, again, was completely wiped out.
Totally different mix of technology.
Oh, yeah, completely. In fact, they built in ways that we would just do. Why?
We still struggle trying to conceive.
Yeah, makes no sense.
Yeah.
But the point is, they were wiped out. And there's stories. We have these stories, the floods, etc. Everybody knows the story of Noah, but believe me when I tell you, there were hundreds of Noahs and hundreds of Noah stories, and it's not even the oldest story. Okay.
Yeah.
Not even by a long shot.
No, that's right.
So, and there was always, all these stories aren't the same either, which is, of course, in my opinion, lending credence to their authenticity. Some Noahs had help, other Noahs had no help at all, and other Noahs, yet again, were saved by complete fluke. And the methods in which these people saved themselves, some by boat, a large number by boats, by building an ark if they had been warned. Some went underground. Some, one story talks about this big silver vessel that came out from the sky.
Metal, they said, right?
Lifted them into the clouds.
Yeah.
Saved them.
Yeah.
That way. Going, okay.
Thank you, Enki.
Yeah, that's right. So it clearly seems that the mix of the Earth's progress of their societies was very similar to what it is today. And let me just unpack it just for a second. Today, we're living side by side with people that are still living like they lived 10,000 years ago. Okay? What we like to call primitive, be it the people in the Amazon basin or in
Borneo.
Africa, in jungle, Borneo, or even Aboriginals that are still sort of adhering to the old ways.
Even Cambodia, Mickey.
Yes, good point. In fact, pretty much anywhere in the world where people have really not taken part that much in the technological world that we all, people who are listening to this, are enjoying, right? So different levels of development all across the world. So some of these people would need help when it came to surviving a cataclysm. And in the first world, our world, there's still enough good people, in my opinion, that would render this help. They would render this aid and help them, which I think would have happened in the past as well.
Yeah.
But people were warned, and people were told to do this and do that, and build an ark and whatnot. But at the same time, also, and it's the same kind of thing. We are still sharing the planet with apes, our cousins. Orangutan, gorilla, chimpanzee, bonobo, etc. And in my opinion, Bigfoot, Sasquatch, whatever you want to call it, I don't care. Whatever, Yowie here in Australia, whatever your local Alma, whatever your local name is for
the hairy man.
Yeah, these creatures, the Ohio grassman, whatever, skunk ape in Florida.
Nice.
I know, right?
Yeah.
But again, and we have been sharing the planet with these creatures for a long time. Millions of years potentially, right? Maybe longer. So this coexistence is something that we like to completely ignore, because in our mind we were taught in school that all history is progressive. We started here at the bottom, wherever the bottom is, it's Stone Age, let's call it, right? We're all living in caves in Stone Age, boom. And ever since then we've been progressively moving up. Yeah, sure, some civilizations, the Roman Empire came, it went, but by and large, we were on an upward trajectory for the last 10,000 years. That's in fact, because we have been doing this for 10,000 years, it must have always been like this, because that's our perspective. We don't have anything else really. I submit here that this is not at all what happens in the real world. Yes, in cycles it does. You rise up, you get to a certain height, and maybe there might be a fall. But I think as far as the global civilization is concerned, that also applies. And it also applies with ourselves. I think we, human beings, Homo sapiens, in several incarnations now that we've experienced, haven't really changed, in my opinion, in millions of years. I think there were culling events. I think there were events when we were changed somewhat. I think there was genetic modification that went on as we went along as well. And I think the human race as it exists today is very homogeneous. And you will look at us and go, oh, but we all look very different. You get really dark people, really light-skinned people, tall, short, all kinds of body shapes, etc., facial features. And still I maintain that what we see today is a very homogeneous race. We're simply not as diverse as we used to be even 15, 20,000 years ago.
There is
just not.
very little DNA difference between all of us.
Yeah.
And it's a scientist looking at the DNA from all of humans says there's not even enough to really call race.
That's right.
At all.
Well, think about that for a second, right?
Uh-huh.
And there are, I mean, if you look at
it's not like we were Florensis and Denisovan and, you know, the Sapien Sapien, right?
Yeah.
We're not any of those. They'd be not like breeds like dogs, I suppose, but they'd be kind of like races, right? Rather than the race thing being a visual aspect, these were considerable difference.
Yeah. And yet we could still interbreed.
That's the crazy part.
Right. So bear that in mind as well, right? And it is really, so I think the human race, and look, we've got stories of dwarfs and giants and, and ogres and hobgoblins and all kinds of things, right? And little people. And I think they're all true. I think there's nothing in these stories, well, some might have been embellished or whatnot, but ultimately I think all of these stories that we've been exposed to since childhood all have truth in them, and they're describing actual creatures, peoples, etc., that we came across in the dim and distant past. And then stories have survived. Because the thing is, we don't know how old these fairy tales are. We have no idea. We don't know. The Nordic songs, you know, the Eddas, right? The epic poems, they were orally transmitted, and because of the meter they had, you knew if you made a mistake.
That's right.
So it also made it easier to learn off by heart. I don't know if you've ever learned anything for school, like a poem by heart. I can still recite poems that I learned because of the meter. And if you don't remember it right, it just doesn't sound right. So I'm not saying that they're unchanged for thousands of years, but we don't know how old they are. We don't know how old they are. They could be hundreds of thousands of years old.
Yeah, before they were written. That's right. Passed down for a very long time. Yeah,
I give you a simple example. I still sing to my children, or maybe not. Well, actually, I still do some lullabies, German lullabies. And it's exactly the same the way my mother sang. I'm sure it's exactly the same way her mother sang them to her children. And my children maybe one day will be able to sing those lullabies to their children. There's no reason why this chain should ever be broken, if all things being equal, of course, right? This chain would never be broken, and it could be millions of years if you wanted it to be. And the chain of these songs would still exist. You know what I mean?
Did you know, Mackie? This might freak some people out on the station here, and that is maybe on YouTube. I'm happy for you to comment below. And did you know that magpies and kookaburras have a song? They've got a family song, and I'll concentrate on kookaburras. So the kookaburra has a song which they teach their children. But it's a multi-part harmony where one is just going cook, 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 and the other one is providing a variation in over the top, and that's the parental thing, and they teach the child how to, they play with the melody, and then they try to bring that in, and when it works, and then they all swap roles and sing together, and that's a slowly evolving song that only their family has. They sound all the same to someone who hasn't heard them before, and it's not a single bird that does that call. It's a family that does it, and that's really that's something that people also don't know. You think of just one kookaburra doing the song. No, it can just do one of those three pieces, one of the three parts, but it won't be all of them. We have a nesting kookaburra family up in a tree just near our kitchen window, because we're kind of like almost in a canopy, and it's very lovely. It's lovely to see them up there. I've saved one. It hurt itself, and we took it to the vet, and it was brought back to us for release, and it's thanked us many times by saying hello and didn't say, "Hey Dave, thank you."
Thanks a lot, buddy.
No, I didn't do that, but it's not as distant as the other ones, and it does make itself known. We do feed all sorts of birds. My goodness me, it's just a wildlife sanctuary here, and but Meki, if you want to call them anything, the sulphur-crested cockatoos are like bikies. It's like a bikie gang. How they fly, and how they treat the person's house that fails to feed them.
Oh, really?
Yeah. If you start feeding the sulphur-cresteds, and then you stop for some reason, they'll just chew everything. They'll turn up and just, they won't give up. But what they were doing was they were pulling all of this moss, this really tall moss, like 4 inches, 5 inches tall moss, out of my gutters, because it was caught up. It grows in the protective mesh, and they were pulling that out because we hadn't fed them. I go, "You just keep doing that." And thank you, because it was helping me. They didn't realize. But they'll do acrobatic tricks, Mackie. I was driving down the highway to Pacific Highway, from Wahroonga down to Chatswood, and one of them flew into the gap in traffic at car height, pretending to be a car. It occupied the space at 60 kilometres an hour, so 45 miles an hour, while we took our turns and drove down the Pacific Highway. It occupied the free space where a car would have been. I'm just going to do that. I'm going to do that for a little bit. I've seen them hang upside down off a power line and drop almost to the ground, bringing their wings out at the last second, and like a bravery thing. I've seen them fly through trees completely inverted, upside down, turned to bank, but rather than turn, they stayed vertical, and then they went completely upside down and flew straight to the ground. Of course, turning at the last second, not injuring themselves. They're amazing to watch. They're not like regular birds. I've got to fly over there, so I'll just fly over there. Not at all. It's like a bunch of bikies, and I'm not being rude to bikies, so I've just got to say that because the regular people don't. They might connect to that. So if they're going to leave a venue that they've just enjoyed a meal or something, one of them might do a burnout on the way out on their motorcycle. Well, that's what these guys do. The sulphur-crested cockatoos are just absolutely... They're a gem. I got to say that. They are one of Australia's gems. They're one of the most friendly. We also have, those brown doves. We have there's one that has like a little thing on its head that sticks straight up like a bunch of flowers, but it's not flowers, it's feathers. That's another dove. And then we have the lorikeets, They're very noisy. They're like little jet fighters, like little F-16s. They're so maneuverable. But anyway, it's a wildlife sanctuary up here, Mackie.
No, but look, that's interesting. But the point you made earlier as well is that these birds have these family songs, and the thing is this: they may not really change terribly much over the course of millennia, even, right? And that's really the point here. So we have all this oral tradition, which we completely dismiss as fairy tales and myth and folklore and blah, blah, blah. And whereas even in nature, we can see, same goes for whale songs and dolphin songs, I guess, where we can see that oral traditions are submitted through time, right? I mean, yeah, it's nice to write things down, but I tell you what, there are a lot of cultures that we come across now, like, lost cultures, or cultures that we destroyed before we had a chance to decipher them, that we simply can no longer read. They wrote everything down, and that's awesome, right? Except, well, that doesn't really help us, because we have no idea how to decipher it. Lucky we found there was a stone that we did, right? As far as the hieroglyphics are concerned. But other languages and other written forms of communication, forget about it. And then, of course, there might be things that we simply don't understand. Let me put it this way. There was a story, or not a story, but there was this research I read years ago around granite and other rocks, and the ability of rocks to potentially store data. It's a crystalline structure. Right? And we know that we can store data in crystals. We know this. We've done it. And if somebody came across our solid-state USB disks, for example, or little thumb drives, or even before that, we came across our CDs and DVDs, whatever it might be, in 10,000 years' time, right? And they look at it, well, what is this? Well, no idea. Don't know what it is. And, maybe as we go forward, maybe it'll be a fashionable thing to have these solid-state drives look like something else. Maybe the technology will move to a point where they will look like a rock, or a pebble, or a pearl, or a diamond, or whatever, right?
Nice.
And industrial diamonds are cheap, as we know.
Yeah.
Now, there's research has been done around, especially around the dolmens and menhirs and Stonehenge, where people have, they say, plugged into what they call data streams, in a way. They hear things, they see things when they sleep there, right? And it's very strange, and maybe those people, these 12, 13,000 years ago, and maybe longer even than that, they found a way to store data or impressions in the crystalline structure of granite and other rocks. And who's to say? And maybe because telepathy, again, maybe was a thing, then they were able to do that way. Because I don't know, if you could manipulate an energy field remotely, why not, right? And certainly we know that Lee lines are a real thing, that these energy lines are running through the Earth. That's something that is actually there. And the Chinese use it. We've got the similar energy lines running through our body. It's acupuncture, which makes use there. And I believe that these, geomancy, acupuncture, as well as feng shui, and some of the Vedic traditions are remnants of that ancient tech day. They're remnants of the ancient tech that have somehow survived to the present day. And it's the same with astrology. Now, we think astrology is just hocus pocus and nonsense and whatever, and chances are that whatever you read in the newspaper is exactly that, nonsense and hocus pocus. But if empirically you could study a population over millions of years or thousands of years or whatever it might be, and then draw conclusions from the day they were born and where they were born and where the stars were at the time, etc., because again, the universe is a closed system as far as we know, for the most part. And who's to say what energies ever so subtly play on us as we live, right? And maybe there is a certain thing that predetermines your future if you're born under a certain stellar constellation. Certain energies that are playing on you. Maybe not as forceful as some other things, but certainly something that should be considered. And that then comes also into things like the tarot and into other forms like the I Ching of trying to divine the future. Because if it is a system, right, and you have figured out the code, the underlying code for the system, which they may very well have, then you should be able, if you understand the whole system, that is, you should be able to predict where the system is going. You should be able to make predictions. And maybe, though the Ouija board, and well, it's slightly different, but certainly systems like the tarot, any kind of card-related or rune-related, even I Ching related kind of clairvoyance or determining what the future might look like, they might very well be plugging into an energy system we no longer understand.
Mm-hmm.
Because I've had experience with it personally, and it's terrifyingly accurate. But you have to do it right. It has to be done right, and you have to go to people that actually, they know what they're doing. So you can't just dismiss it. You can't just dismiss astrology as something that is nonsense, because guess what? People, even in our time, I mean, Ronald Reagan had what I guess in old times you would refer to as a court astrologer. He had that. I mean, you go, what? Yeah.
The Roman
Some
Catholic,
of
sorry,
the
the Catholic
decisions-
Church has astronomers, Mickey.
Yeah. Look.
And in fact, they've got the largest binoculars on Earth.
Yeah.
And
Oh, yeah, no.
What was it? What was it called? Lucifer.
That's right.
And then they changed the name recently.
We don't like it. It doesn't play well with the,
No.
with the test groups.
Didn't test well.
No, but yeah, that's astronomy. But I mean that astrology
Mm-hmm.
in its I guess pure form,
Mhm.
right, and practiced by people that know what they're doing, could very well be a very good tool to predicting or at least gleaning the future. Because I think we're living in a probabilistic universe. Okay, everything
Mm-hmm.
has a certain probability within our world. Quantum theory tells us that, if nothing else. And certain outcomes are more likely than others, but they're not impossible. None of the outcomes are impossible. And I guess it's just a nudge here and a wink there, and there may be some active thinking over here, and things go a different direction. Things are, going on a different track, and you can nudge your future along if you want to. Some people say, Dave, they sit down and actively imagine their day.
Mm-hmm.
And then, things just happen. Like, it's like positive manifestation, if you will, right? I've used manifestation myself when I was younger. I wrote down some things 7 times, and I did it for 7 weeks. I filled 7 pages each day with the seven things that I
Wow.
saw myself. And the truth is this, I have gone beyond the manifestation now. Because back when I was doing it, I was quite young and my imagination was limited. I felt I was limited, so I didn't
Mm-hmm.
dream very big. I dreamt big for what I was thinking. I thought, I'm going to do this, what's going to happen. And lo and behold, it all happened. And maybe I should have just put down much bigger things than I did. Like, that's why I keep telling people when they ask me, don't imagine small, imagine as big as you can. If you fall short, okay, you'll still probably, achieve amazing things, but do not sell yourself short. Do not limit yourself in your own imagination, which is what I did, looking back. I didn't feel like it, but it's...
Oh, I know what you mean. There's a great example, Mickey, of I think it was Monkey Garage, where the guy would go and buy something from someone, and the funniest scene ever, and they used it in their promo, and it was the guy starts by saying, 2,000, and he goes, okay, 1,000, and because you're going to find a middle ground, and he goes, 1,500, because he realizes what the game is, but only after that, after he lost, he goes, I should have gone higher, and the guy goes, yeah, you should have.
Yeah.
Because once you're into the bargain, once you start doing that, you can't go up anymore.
That's right.
So you should have said 10,000.
Yes.
Yeah. So go
see-
high, and that I'm
See, and
making that example, Mackie, for everyone here that might have seen Monkey Garage, that
yeah,
episode.
but we see, it's very interesting, right? We limit ourselves,
Mm-hmm.
and
Totally.
I wonder what, because the story just told, that would apply to 99% of the population. I reckon.
That's right.
The question though is, why? Why are we limiting ourselves in this fashion? And that for me is the real kicker, because something has to tell us that something is stopping us. Is it our upbringing? Is it something genetic? I don't know. But some people, of course, have none of that, and those are the people that really achieve, rightly or wrongly, right? And some people really shouldn't achieve at all. There shouldn't be anywhere near anything of anything. But nonetheless, they're there, right?
So, Mickey, there's you know that the triangle, the golden triangle of home, shops, and work. People don't really want to be outside of that,
I think you're right.
even with the struggles they have within that triangle. No, I've really got no. You know, I don't really want to survive a catastrophe. I don't really care. You know. Yeah, I know we're kind of struggling with the mortgage and everything's really expensive, but I'll press on. I'm just going to press on. I'm not going to change my situation. You know, my credit card bill's really high, but geez, I'm not going to stop spending on it. What? I won't make a plan to bring down the balance to zero. I'm just going to keep doing it. So maybe someone goes, I'm having trouble paying my credit card off. What's the limit? 10,000. Maybe you should bring the limit down, and start paying it off. Oh, really?
Yeah.
Is that a thing? Is it? Yeah, that's what everyone does. Yeah. You seem to be stuck in the "I've got lots of money" mode. Yeah, don't do that. Don't spend all the money you have.
That's good of you.
But we're in a spend cycle. There isn't very much incentive, Mackie, within the banks to save money because the interest rates are so low.
Of course, but also our entire civilizations, at the moment at least, maybe at least for the last 60 years, we've been geared towards spending.
Mm-hmm.
Again, like I always bring it up, but my grandparents would buy things and expect them to last their life.
That's right.
We buy phones now for $2,000 or $3,000, which we expect to replace next year. That's the expectation we have, which is completely insane. It's what you go what? I don't do it, right? So my phone is quite old, but we have this expectation. And if something breaks, it's broken. We don't even very few of us are in the mode of let's get it fixed. Now let's buy new. Let's buy new. And even cars, right? I mean, spending a lot of money on a car, and then you expect to run for, I don't know, 5 years, 6 years, if you're lucky, maybe 10 years, if you look after it. But it's also expecting, okay, it'll fall apart one day, and that's okay. But there's still classics around from the 1940s and from the 1920s, in fact. They're still running if you look after it. I reckon if you buy a car in the late 90s or early 2000s and you look after it, it still wouldn't work after 40 or 50 years because it just would fall apart. The parts would wear out, and you couldn't find them anymore, and that'd be the end of it because they're just not built like they used to.
Yeah, that's the truth. So my car is 21 years old. It's getting up there, and at some point, I won't be able to find spares for it.
Yeah.
I just won't. There just won't be any spares. All the companies that make the spares, not like in America because the business is so high, that you can still get chassis rails for a 56 Chevy that's being made. Brand new. Not here. No. No. So all of the cars you see over 25 years old are owned by lovers of cars.
That's correct.
And it is a love, Mackie, that you can't get between them. It isn't a thing. I go to a car show. There's a car show near me that's next Saturday. So if you live anywhere in the Central Coast or North, of that. There's surf center cars on at Lakes Beach at Budgie, and they have 100 years of cars there.
Wow.
Yeah, there's a guy that he'll bring out his 1920 something or other car, and it does 20 miles an hour. He'll bring that out, and there's people with today's cars, and then everything in between. It's just extraordinary. So it's only there from between 8 and 11 in the morning because you don't have too much UV exposure.
Yeah, well, no, fair
on your
enough.
paint, right? And there's always a bunch of awards given out. But I'm just going to say, Meki's right. There was an era right as fuel injection came in, where that was the. I don't mean fuel injection into the intake, but rather direct injection into the engine. That's the era that you can do the most with, and anything prior, which was a distributor, that's tuning. That is, you just loosen up that bolt and like the nut, and you can turn the distributor, and and give it some advance or pull some timing from it. But with an ECU, you do need a lot of effort and some training to be able to program an ECU for its for all of the curves. Yeah. So anyway, just putting that out there because I am a car guy, and today I just changed the snout on my supercharger. I had one rebuilt and machined and stuff. It's very nice. So it doesn't make the car go any faster. It's just going to make it last a lot longer.
That's something that we have lost in many ways. This
do the wrenching myself,
I mean, I know people.
Should have a car channel.
The car channel. Slightly different tech. I mean, this is a true story. I won't tell you who or what, but I know people that buy new clothes because they don't get around to washing the old ones.
Oh, I've heard of that. And socks and underwear.
All kinds of things, my friend.
Yeah.
And you're going, what? And no, just go buy new ones. We have come to accept this throwaway.
Like at the end of the world.
Yeah, throwaway mentality. No, don't need it. It's okay. I'll buy a new one. I'll just buy a new one. And of course it's unsustainable because we can't make an infinite amount of product with the limited amount of resources that we actually have. Okay, we're not mining asteroids yet. I can tell you that I know of. So whatever we have here, we need to keep using and having. And why not? Why not repair the things that you have? But see, if we did that, the entire system would collapse. The entire debt-ridden system would collapse because it's based on debt. We're living in a debt society, a debt civilization. In fact, that's what our civilization will be called in the 500 years' time.
That's right.
This is the civilization of debt. And if we didn't all spend all the time, then the companies that make all this stuff, they would go broke. And funnily enough, one thing though, it wouldn't affect people's jobs anymore because it's only the parasites that are getting rich because they've got rid of the workers. Everything is automated and robotized mostly, right? Or it's going there.
1 minute.
So, yeah, so the parasites are the ones that suffer if we decide to repair our stuff and not buy new things all the time. And the worst thing is, of course, fashion. Oh, I can't wear that. It's a pair of pants. No, I can't. Nah.
So
it's still good.
In the same style, Meki, is fast
it's
food.
Too long.
There's fast fashion.
Yeah.
And so fast fashion should be turned to slow fashion, like slow food, like traditional. You order it, it's made.
There shouldn't be any fashion at all. You just have a pair of pants that you like. You will like them. They're comfortable. They're functional. Thank you very much. Oh no, they got to be.
I'm stealing a joke from Stephen Wright. My socks, I go by thickness. Anyway, we'll be back after a very short break, and we'll be starting a brand new YouTube video just for the next hour. All right? Take care. Very short. See you in a second.